You open your phone, scroll through a feed that never ends, and pause for half a second on a post you made a few hours ago. 10 likes, 1 comment, a small rush of warmth spreads through your chest. Someone saw you. Someone acknowledged you. You smile, put the phone down, and tell yourself it doesn't matter. But deep down it does. Every single human being carries an invisible hunger, the need to be seen, understood, and validated. Validation is not vanity, it's survival. Since the very beginning of human life, our minds have been wired to seek approval from others because belonging once meant staying alive. Thousands of years ago, being accepted by the tribe was the difference between life and death. If you were rejected, you didn't just lose friends. You lost protection, food, safety, and warmth. The brain learned quickly that social approval was not optional. It became a primal necessity, etched deep into our psychology. And even though the world has changed, the brain hasn't evolved as fast. That same ancient mechanism still drives us today, disguised under modern habits like chasing likes, followers, and compliments. Imagine a child showing a drawing to their parents. The paper is covered in uneven lines and splashes of color, but the child's eyes are glowing with hope. They're not really asking if it's good. They're asking, do you see me? Am I enough? When the parent smiles and says, that's beautiful, something powerful happens inside that child's brain. A release of dopamine and oxytocin, the chemistry of connection. They feel safe, valuable, loved. But when that validation is absent, the message changes. The child starts to wonder if being unseen means being unworthy. That question follows us into adulthood, quietly shaping how we interact, love, work, and even post online. Psychologists call it social mirroring, the process of understanding ourselves through the reflections we get from others. When people smile at you, respond to your words, or acknowledge your presence, your brain uses that feedback to build a sense of who you are. Without it, the sense of self begins to fade. Studies have shown that isolation and social neglect can activate the same regions of the brain that register physical pain. In other words, being ignored hurts, literally. The human brain processes rejection like a wound. The paradox is that while validation is natural, the constant need for it can quietly take control. Our modern world amplifies this dependency. Social media turned validation into a visible scoreboard. Every like, every view, every heart is a small hit of approval that trains the brain like a slot machine. You post, you wait, you refresh, and each response becomes a tiny signal. You matter, you exist. But the more we rely on external feedback to feel worthy, the emptier we become when it's gone. Validation starts to transform from nourishment into addiction. Imagine a young woman named Claire. She's confident, smart, and ambitious, but her self-worth has become tied to the glowing numbers on her screen. If a post performs well, her day brightens. If it doesn't, a cloud settles in her mind. She tells herself she doesn't care, but she checks again, hoping someone noticed. The momentary high of attention never lasts, and soon she's chasing it again. Her self-esteem becomes a fragile house built on the shifting sands of other people's opinions. And yet, Claire is not weak. She's human. We all have a little of her inside us. From an evolutionary point of view, our brains never developed a mechanism to ignore validation. The reward circuits that kept our ancestors bonded to their tribes still respond to modern signals: faces, emojis, hearts, and notifications. Dopamine spikes every time we receive social approval. It's the same chemical that drives motivation, pleasure, and learning. In moderation, it's healthy. But when we depend on it excessively, we lose the ability to regulate our emotions internally. Our sense of worth becomes outsourced. Instead of feeling, I am enough, we start to believe, I'll be enough when they say I am. Validation comes in many forms: a teacher's praise, a boss's compliment, a friend's reassurance, or even a stranger's attention. But the most powerful kind is self-validation, the ability to recognize your own worth without external applause. Unfortunately, this is the form we learn the least about. Society teaches us to chase validation, not to generate it. From a young age, we're rewarded for compliance and punished for disobedience. We learn that love and approval must be earned. Over time, we internalize this conditional pattern. If I do this right, I'll be accepted. It becomes a mental script that runs in the background of our lives. Consider how this plays out in adulthood. You work hard to impress your boss, not just for the paycheck, but for the acknowledgement. You go to the gym, not just for health, but for admiration. You post pictures online, not just to share moments, but to feel seen. Every action has a social echo. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's part of being human. The danger begins when that echo becomes the only voice we listen to. The psychologist Carl Rogers once said that unconditional positive regard, being accepted without judgment, is one of the rarest and most healing experiences a person can have. When someone sees you for who you are, without conditions, it helps you integrate the parts of yourself you usually hide. But when all the validation we receive is conditional, based on looks, success, popularity, or performance, it reinforces the fear that love must be earned, not felt. This fear quietly shapes our relationships. We perform instead of connecting. We please instead of expressing. We hide behind masks because being truly seen feels dangerous. Validation at its core is not about ego, it's about connection. Every compliment, every nod of understanding is a bridge between two minds saying, "I recognize you." Without that bridge, loneliness takes root. Loneliness is not the absence of people, it's the absence of recognition. You can be surrounded by others and still feel invisible if no one truly acknowledges your inner world. And in that invisibility, the mind begins to starve. When you strip everything away, achievements, followers, possessions, what remains is the question every human asks, whether out loud or in silence: do I matter? That question is the heartbeat of validation. It's why we write, speak, create, perform, and love. We are constantly reaching out for mirrors that reflect us back to ourselves. But here's the irony. The same need that connects us can also control us. When validation becomes the currency of our self-worth, we start trading authenticity for attention. We stop asking, "Who am I?" and start asking, "Who do they want me to be?" The deeper truth about attention is that it is both medicine and poison, healing when it comes from connection, toxic when it replaces self-understanding. To decode this paradox, we must look beyond the surface of behavior and into the quiet architecture of the human mind, the patterns that keep us seeking, pleasing, and performing long after we've outgrown the need. In therapy sessions, people often say, "I just want to be seen." It sounds simple, but it carries centuries of emotional weight. To be seen is to exist in the eyes of another, to feel anchored in reality. When that validation is consistent and genuine, it builds resilience. When it's absent or inconsistent, it breeds anxiety, self-doubt, and emotional dependency. The brain begins to anticipate rejection before it happens. It learns to scan every interaction for signs of approval or disapproval. This hypervigilance drains mental energy and keeps us trapped in a loop of seeking reassurance. Some people respond by becoming people pleasers, molding themselves to fit others' expectations. Others withdraw completely, deciding that rejection hurts less when you stop trying. Both are reactions to the same wound, the fear of being unseen. The need for validation doesn't disappear, it just hides under new disguises. It might appear as perfectionism, overachievement, or even cynicism, all subtle ways of saying, "Notice me, but don't let me need you." Modern culture doesn't help. We live in an economy of attention where validation is monetized and scarcity is engineered. Platforms are designed to exploit our psychological wiring, rewarding us with tiny bursts of approval that keep us coming back. Each notification is a whisper from the digital void. You exist, but over time, this externalized attention reshapes our identity. We stop defining ourselves by values and start defining ourselves by visibility. The first step toward freedom from this cycle is awareness, understanding that the need for validation is not weakness, but wiring. It's biology doing what it has always done, seeking connection. But we can evolve our relationship with it. We can learn to give ourselves what we've been waiting for others to provide. Self-validation doesn't mean isolation or arrogance. It means recognizing your own worth, even when the world is silent. The truth about attention is not that we should reject it, but that we should learn to receive it consciously. Attention is energy. It flows where focus goes. When you understand how it works, you stop being controlled by it. You can enjoy appreciation without becoming addicted to it. You can welcome validation without depending on it. You can love being seen, but no longer fear being invisible. So how do we begin to break free from the invisible pull of validation? How do we stop chasing approval without becoming cold or disconnected from others? The answer is not to reject our need for recognition, it's to understand it. You can't silence a voice you don't acknowledge. The hunger to be seen is part of your humanity. The goal is not to erase it, but to learn how to feed it in a healthier way. Self-validation starts with awareness, catching the moments when you automatically look outward for confirmation. When you share something and immediately check for a reaction. When silence feels like rejection, when your mood depends on someone else's response. In those moments, you can pause and ask, what am I really seeking right now? Usually, it's not approval. It's reassurance, it's safety, it's the feeling of mattering. And that feeling, though it begins in connection, can also be built from within. Think of your mind as an echo chamber. Every compliment, every like, every nod you receive reverberates inside it. But so do your own words. Most people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they love. They criticize, diminish, and doubt their own value. Over time, those inner messages shape the very identity they're trying to validate externally. The brain doesn't distinguish much between inner and outer voices. It believes whatever it hears most often. So if the loudest voice in your life is your own self-criticism, no amount of external validation will ever be enough. Rewiring this takes time, but it begins with compassion. Not the kind of self-love that ignores flaws, but the kind that accepts imperfection without shame. It's telling yourself, I don't have to be perfect to deserve peace. You don't need 1,000 eyes watching to feel that you exist. Existence itself is proof of worth, the same life force that made the stars move. And the oceans breathe made you too. The fact that you're here means you matter. There's a quiet power in learning to validate yourself. It doesn't mean you stop caring what others think. It means their opinions no longer decide your value. You can appreciate feedback without being enslaved by it. You can hear criticism without collapsing under it. You can love being appreciated while knowing you'd still be whole without it. That balance, that emotional independence, is what true confidence looks like. Not arrogance, not indifference, just peace. But self-validation is not built in isolation. It grows through mindful connection, relationships where honesty and acceptance coexist. The best kind of validation doesn't inflate your ego, it mirrors your truth. It's the friend who says, "You're wrong here, but I still care." The partner who sees your flaws and stays. The teacher who challenges you because they believe in your potential. Real validation doesn't feed dependency. It awakens self-trust. In contrast, false validation feels sweet at first, but leaves you empty. It comes from people who praise you for what you can give them, not for who you are. It's built on transaction, not truth. Our modern world is full of it. Quick compliments, empty likes, performative empathy. To stay sane, you must learn to tell the difference between validation that nourishes and validation that numbs. One helps you grow, the other keeps you chasing. The human brain is not designed for constant exposure to judgment and comparison. Social media compresses thousands of years of tribal psychology into a single, glowing screen. You're not meant to process the opinions of hundreds of strangers every day. Each reaction, even when positive, consumes attention, the most valuable resource your mind has. The more you give it away, the less you have for yourself. This is why digital burnout feels like emotional exhaustion. It's not just screen time, it's attention time, the draining effort of constantly seeking external cues to define who you are. Imagine unplugging from that system, even for a few days. Imagine waking up without the urge to check how the world reacted to you overnight. Imagine doing something beautiful, painting, writing, creating, loving, without showing anyone and still feeling fulfilled. That's the beginning of freedom. The moment you no longer need to be seen to feel alive, you start to live. There's an old paradox in Eastern philosophy. The less you chase approval, the more authentic validation you attract. People can sense when you operate from self-trust instead of need. Confidence has a quiet frequency that draws others naturally. When you're not performing for attention, your presence becomes magnetic because it's real. The world is full of noise, but truth always cuts through. This doesn't mean you'll never crave attention again. You will. We all do. But instead of seeing it as a weakness, you'll recognize it as a signal, a reminder to return to yourself. The need for validation is not a flaw to eliminate. It's a compass pointing you toward the parts of yourself that still need healing. Every time you feel the pull of wanting to be seen, ask yourself, what am I trying to prove, and to whom? The answer often reveals the wound beneath the surface. Healing that wound doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow unlearning. You begin by noticing when you shapeshift to fit expectations. You practice sitting in discomfort when approval doesn't come. You remind yourself gently that your value is not up for negotiation. You validate your own emotions, even the ugly ones, instead of waiting for permission to feel them. Bit by bit, you reclaim your sense of worth from the outside world and bring it home. Over time, something beautiful happens. You stop seeking validation and start giving it to others and to yourself. You begin to see people not as competitors for attention, but as mirrors, reflecting the same human longing. You understand that everyone, at some level, is just trying to be seen. And in that realization, empathy blooms. When you see others deeply, without judgment, you create the same healing you've been searching for. The need for validation transforms into a bridge from self to others, from pain to connection. Because in the end, attention is not the problem. Disconnection is. The need to be seen is universal. The mistake is thinking it can only come from outside. The truth is, we are already seen by the quiet awareness within us that witnesses everything. That awareness is the purest validation there is. It doesn't need followers, applause, or proof. It simply says you exist, you are enough. When you start to live from that place, your relationship with the world changes. Attention becomes a gift, not a drug. Validation becomes appreciation, not dependence. You become both the giver and the receiver of acknowledgement, a self-sustaining system of worth. You still enjoy being seen, but you no longer need it to survive. You can share your truth without fear of rejection because your sense of self no longer lives in someone else's hands. And maybe that's the real freedom we've all been searching for. Not to be free from others, but to be free within ourselves. To know that even if no one claps, we still have the right to dance. Even if no one listens, our voice still matters. Even if no one validates us, our existence remains undeniable. So the next time you find yourself scrolling, waiting, hoping for someone to notice you, pause, take a breath, and remember, you already have the attention that truly counts, your own. Everything else is just an echo. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to look within. Ask yourself what kind of validation you've been chasing and what kind of peace you could build if you stopped running from yourself. At MindDecode HQ, we explore the hidden psychology behind what makes us human, the unseen mechanisms that drive our behavior, emotions, and connections. Subscribe to the channel, and together let's decode the mind, one truth at a time.